Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walterslaw, my co-host, Eddie Richard. And we have a loaded show for you again. We're going to be going over the Trade Dudline, as we call it. Thanks to Thomas for that. He had kind of coined the phrase, or at least for this last Trade Dudline, as not a lot happened, unfortunately, that we kind of expected. Eddie and I talked about. The Ducks did make a couple trades. We'll talk about those. Some drama with Deslauriers and Getzlaf. We'll go into that as well. We'll briefly just cover these couple games against Colorado before that, and basically most of the show is going to be on the trade deadline. Getzlaf, not getting moved. Deslauriers not getting moved. All kinds of other stuff going on. We'll talk about some of the trades around the league. Comments by Murray, comments by Getzlaf. So there's a lot that we're going to be going over on the show. So just buckle up. Grab your favorite alcoholic beverage or maybe coffee or whatever you're drinking, and we'll rock and roll. Eddie, before the trade deadline, your two teams collided. You had the Ducks facing off against the Colorado Avalanche for 2 games. I suspected the Ducks would lose both these games, and they did. The first one actually was pretty close. Ducks only losing this one 2-0, but it was really 1-0 until towards the end of the game there. And then, of course, they lost the other one on Sunday when all the basic trade deadline drama started. But what did you think about the Ducks in these 2 games before we dive into the trade deadline?
Well, the first one, it seemed like they were going to pull out something. Like, I don't know. I've been saying it through the whole season, too. I don't know why Colorado has such an issue playing against the Ducks. I don't understand that at all. Like, they seem like every time they play the Ducks, they're never that Colorado team. Yeah, they had a few games where they just absolutely dominated, but even in those dominating games, they still didn't play to their full potential. And I don't know, something about the Ducks is their kryptonite. So if the Ducks didn't squeak in the playoffs, or if they had a team that was capable enough to squeak in the playoffs, and they had to play the Colorado the Avalanche in the first round, I think the Avs would be in trouble, especially with, I guess, the missed luck they have against the Ducks. And then that last game they played against the Ducks, you could just see things heating up. I really wanted to see one more game between these two. I think it would have been absolutely madness. I think with that last game they played, the Ducks were frustrated. They lost bad. They got smoked, but Ducks weren't fighting back or backing down to that physicality. They were really running and gunning on them. And I was really looking forward to just hopefully seeing one more game, them playing. Too bad their series ended, because there was some bad blood starting to boil right there.
Yeah, and that bad blood's kind of interesting, because we'll talk about Getzlaf and the Avs later in the show as that kind of unfolded. But you're right. It seemed like the Ducks had a decent game on the first one against them. Giving up that late goal in the game to make it 2-0. But I mean, it was a pretty even battle. I think the first game was kind of boring, honestly. I was kind of sitting there going, all right, somebody going to do something. And Colorado gets a late goal in the second period. Just kind of waiting for some action. Gibson played well in that game. Johansson played well in that game. It was a goalie duel. So if you like those types of games, that's what you got in that one. And then, the second one, you had some more animosity. You had Drysdale getting his second goal, which was good. And it seemed like maybe the Ducks could pull out a point, right? They were down 2-0. He gets that one and the third. But then Colorado answered right back to make it 3-1, and then another one by McKinnon, and that was pretty much the end of it. But the real drama, I guess, started kind of in between these games. Throughout the weekend, this trade deadline was a little bit different. We knew that it was going to be a little bit weird with the lockdowns, the flat cap, the expansion draft, and all these things. There were moves that were made over the weekend. Monday was pretty much a dud until the Mantha trade at the very end. But the drama started really with Deslauriers before this second game against Colorado, Eddie. This was just really strange. You had Elliot Freeman putting out there that Deslauriers was going to go to the Penguins, and this was a little bit after 1 o'clock. Remember, that Duck game on Sunday was at 3. So you had that out there. I wasn't really surprised about Pittsburgh. You and I had talked about it, put it in an article. You remember Dan from Pittsburgh Hockey Now. He talked about it back in the beginning of March, that Pittsburgh was interested in Deslauriers. So when it came out, I mean, emotionally, I was like, oh man, because I like Deslauriers. I know he doesn't provide offense. I know his analytics are terrible, yada, yada, yada. But I like the fact that he fights. You and I've talked about that. He brings grit. He stands up for the players and whatnot. So that part I was kind of bummed. And then seeing that tweet, and then Elliot Friedman deletes it and then goes and puts out, hey, they're just talking now between the Ducks and the Penguins. It's like, okay, so what the heck's going on? Then while that's happening, Eric Stevens puts out that he talked to the league and the Ducks and that there's no trade. And then you also had Dave Maloney from Pittsburgh Hockey Now. He said the same thing, that there was no deal yet. And he even added that it was unlikely. So we were kind of left hanging on that day, Eddie, while the Ducks were playing Colorado. I put out the article kind of chronicling the timeline. But what did you think? Because Elliot Friedman deleted the first tweet, put out the second one, which made sense, but then he deleted that one too. I thought the whole thing was very strange.
Yeah, something obviously happened, and maybe he jumped the gun a little bit and he deleted that. I don't know. Maybe they were close to making a deal. Maybe Friedman jumping the gun like that stopped the deal. I have no idea. It's just weird. Maybe there's more moving parts to it that were going to go on, but it ended up happening, so that deal just fell through. I guess we'll never know. That's too bad, but I'm glad he didn't get traded, because once I heard that, I'm like, oh, great. My favorite player from the Ducks going to be traded. Like, the Ducks need that grit. They need that person that's going to fight and to stand up for his teammates and pretty much provide that energy, especially in a season like this. The Ducks can use any energy they could possibly have. So I'm glad that it didn't come to fruition. I'm still kind of confused on how someone like that, who rarely makes mistakes, something must have happened that we don't know about, and maybe there was more to that trade than just sending him over there to Pittsburgh. Maybe it was going to be a future consideration thing, like you joked about, Mike, and then they were going to talk something bigger with someone else. I guess we'll never know. Hopefully it comes out soon. It just slips and we get an explanation, but we wouldn't hold our breath on it.
Yeah, I mean, that part was kind of weird. And then, like you said, we found out it wasn't like really going to go through after that game. You're kind of left as a cliffhanger. So then you go to the next day on the trade deadline, and then Andy Strickland, Bally Sports Midwest now, used to be Fox Sports, right? He puts out, oh yeah, they're talking. So they're like, okay, here we go again. Is this going to happen or not? Obviously, you all know it didn't happen, but he said that there were still talks on the trade deadline about it. So sitting there going, okay, well what's going to go on with this? The other part of it that got crazier too was during that game, one of my sources hit me up and said, hey, Getzlaf's talking about, being open to being moved. And I was like, okay, sure, yeah, whatever. Like, we heard all this stuff, not a big deal. And then the same thing, there's a report early in the morning on that day from TVA Sports saying, oh yeah, Getzlaf's open to that and whatnot. So now you have both these going on. So the day starts out kind of weird. You're like, okay, is Deslauriers going to get traded? Is Getzlaf going to get traded? And then you saw, that was the end of the Deslauriers stuff, right? Strickland put that out, and that was it. Then there was more and more people putting out stuff about Getzlaf. We did hear over the weekend, too, from Sportsnet, Chris Johnston. He talked about Montreal and Vegas being interested in Getzlaf. And then again, Andy Strickland came out and said that Vegas was interested in Getzlaf. So you had that going. So the morning started out like crazy on that Monday. You were sitting there going, what in the heck is going on with this? What is going to happen? And of course, it ended up both of them didn't get moved. And instead, the Ducks made a couple minor moves, which we'll get to those in a minute. But the Getzlaf thing was pretty interesting. We also heard after the trade deadline, I had a different source tell me that Joe Sakic placed a call and that he was very interested in Getzlaf. And he wanted to add him in there so that they could make a run for the Cup, which I knew. I'm like, oh my God. Because it was after the trade deadline. I hadn't told you yet, Eddie. So I was like, oh man, dude, I'm going to tell him this. He's going to be excited because he's going to be like, oh, your other team is interested in him, but then you know it didn't happen. So it was just kind of crazy. And then you had Pittsburgh was also in on this too, we heard, and Jeff Carter ended up going to Pittsburgh. So I wonder if that all was tied in together too. If there was some discussion of Getzlaf going to Pittsburgh, you had Deslauriers too. Did that all? I don't know. Maybe there's two completely separate things, and maybe it was completely unrelated. But it's just weird to see all this discussion about both of them. Nothing happens. And that's where it stood put on that. What did you think about this whole Getzlaf thing before we go into the trades that the Ducks actually did make, Eddie? What was your thoughts on him? You know, he could have possibly also played with Perry in Montreal. That was another possible outcome.
Yeah, that was just really, really weird, and it blew up from there. And just the more the morning kept going on, or when I checked on Twitter, or when I briefly came home and put it on NHL Network, it just kept talking about Getzlaf. So that trade talk was heating up. I thought he was going to be traded. Obviously, if he's willing to move his no movement clause, yeah, he stated that he wants to get returned back to the Ducks to help him get better. But obviously, he probably thought long and hard if that's the right decision for him. Talked it over with his family. He's a real competitive person. So I really think that deep down inside too, he also wanted to go for a chance to win a second cup, and that's his right. And that just really upset me that Murray couldn't facilitate a trade and get him to a cup contending team, especially like the Colorado Avalanche, because it seems like that would have been a for sure lock, bearing any injuries, that the Avalanche would have won the cup if they're adding someone like Getzlaf in their lineup. Would probably slot into that third line role, and less pressure on him, and he can just perform in a third line role. That would have been a dream team right there. And that would have been like the team that I just can't even imagine. I would have been the first person to get a Getzlaf jersey. That would have been it's just amazing. But it's just crazy how he was willing to waive his no movement clause, and a trade couldn't get done. Like, obviously this player Getzlaf has given his heart and soul and everything he had into this organization, and they should have tried everything possible. I don't even care if you're not going to get the maximum return for him. Obviously, there's no way in hell that you're going to get a first overall or a roster player or a top tier prospect. You'll be lucky to get, third, maybe fourth round pick for him at this point, and you're going to eat up salary. But at least you get something in return, and you give him the opportunity to go out there and win a cup. I was also told too by someone that knows someone in the front office from the Ducks that Montreal had some offer on the table to the Ducks for Getzlaf. I couldn't find anything set in stone to verify that, but obviously later on in the day when I found that Montreal was one of the teams that were interested in it, that pretty much made sense. And I wonder what the option or the offer was, but still, he should have been given that opportunity to go out there and try to earn that second cup. Because obviously this decision that Getzlaf made to potentially waive his no movement clause, it wasn't just an overnight decision. I'm sure he had discussion with his family. I'm sure he had discussions among himself, just really like taking into consideration everything that's going on and the amount of years or time he has left in the league, if he even wants to play beyond this season. It just, I don't know, that pissed me off about Murray. It just, like, he owes Getzlaf. I think Getzlaf is owed and earned that opportunity to do that. If you don't get this first overall pick that you thought all these teams are just gonna just drop their pants and give you pots of gold for players that aren't worth it, that's not how it works. And it's just sad to see Getzlaf still stuck on this shithole of a team right now, when he could have been out there re-sparking some competitiveness and trying to win another cup for him. So it's just kind of sad that he's still on the Ducks right now when he was willing to waive his no movement clause. But I mean, still glad to see him in a Ducks jersey regardless, but I think he deserved better.
Yeah, and this could have been a win-win for both. I mean, if you think about Getzlaf getting traded, Pittsburgh got Carter, similar age, similar numbers. Obviously, a difference in the salary, of course. The Ducks would have had to retain salary. That's a no-brainer. But for Carter, they got a couple picks out of him. There doesn't seem to be unreasonable that the Ducks could have got a couple picks or maybe one decent pick, something for Getzlaf that would have helped out the team. And then Getzlaf, say, goes to Vegas or Colorado. Those were the two closer teams, obviously, to home. I think we mentioned Vegas like one of the earlier podcasts this year, just because we had talked about him staying close to home, and that was when all those rumors, the rumors kicked up there even before the season we talked about with Getzlaf. So, there was that option too. He could have gone there for a couple months, played in Vegas or Colorado, and then, if he would have won, come home. Pittsburgh, Montreal, a little bit more difficult, a little bit farther away. I know some people kind of had hope for Montreal, like you talked about, which was sound like a serious contender because you heard that through your pipeline, and then Sportsnet talked about it too. If he would have been reunited with Perry, it might have been something interesting to see as well. Another option. None of it happened, but I think, the Ducks could have given him that chance. I think he would have definitely come back. His family's here. That's a huge concern to him, which I applaud him for that. I mean, of course, you have your wife and you have several of your kids. Your home base is here in Southern California. I'm not going to give him flack at all. I mean, your family should be, if not number one, it should be one of your top obvious considerations in something like this. So, and I think it's good that he and Murray did talk about it and confirm that is what had happened, about trying to be moved. I do like that the Ducks are more transparent with some of this stuff because we heard from Murray and we heard from Getzlaf. Whether you like the outcome or not, as far as this part, at least we got some feedback because sometimes you don't hear anything. At least we heard about this. I mean, we didn't hear all the specific details. Getzlaf only confirmed Vegas. He didn't really say much about the other teams. But we've heard from different people about the other ones. So, we knew at least 4 that were kind of in on him. So I was happy that part, that they had him do the interview. They put out that article. They had the video of him. They had Murray talking about it. So, we got some insight onto what happened. They confirmed that, yes, he was willing to be moved. It wasn't the result that we wanted. And I'm with you. Yeah, I would want him to stay on the team. If he comes back in the offseason, we had a person asking about that too. If we would know 100%, what we'd give to know 100%. I think it's a no-brainer, Eddie. I think either he's going to retire or he's going to come back as a Duck. I don't really see any other options going on from where we're at now.
Yeah, and it's all going to determine what happens next season. I know it's not fun not having fans there, and then I guess probably kind of tiring playing the same team 8 different times. I know other players in the league have complained about it. Nathan McKinnon of the Avalanche was one of them too, complaining about how the situation was. It doesn't. I guess the energy and excitement level is not there with the fans, and as much as as we need them on a daily life basis for us to get a little bit of a break from normal things in life, they need us there too to cheer them and get that energy flowing. And it's different when you're performing in front of a crowd, regardless of if you're performing or not. So it's going to depend what happens next season. If I don't know, I hope he just, when he retires, it's going to be just strictly on his own decision, and he goes out the way he wants to go out, and not just because he's being forced out. Because he doesn't want to play in this eight teams again, play the same team 8 different times and no fans and stoppage because of COVID or anything like that. So I hope when he makes his decision, it's basically he can go out on his own time, and I hope he gets the accomplishments and recognition and the records that he definitely deserves.
And that was also mentioned too. He's still trying to chase Teemu's point record. So there's a little bit of that in there thrown in as well. He said he already won a cup. If he didn't win a cup, that could have been a factor as well, playing into that. And he mentioned what you said. He wasn't really happy with the way the season went. And who wouldn't be? Face it. This season's been trash for this team. We all know that. It's not a shocker. And then not even having fans in the building. There's going to be fans. We're going to be at some of these games here coming up. They're allowing fans, if you didn't hear about that, but it's only going to be like 1,700 something fans. So I don't know. I'm going to be at the game on Friday. It's going to be probably kind of weird because everybody's going to be spaced out and whatnot. I just want to see a freaking game in person, And I know some other people traveled to other states and things like that and saw the Ducks, but I don't really have that luxury. So I'm happy I do get to see him. I know that the season's going nowhere, but I love watching games in person. So we'll try to give some kind of boost, even though it's going to be only 10% capacity there. So it's just kind of frustrating the way it worked out. I would have liked to see him get a chance to win another cup. The Ducks get something to help them out, and then go from there. I mean, it didn't work out. It's not the worst thing in the world, But, to see that and see this discussion happen, because, we didn't think it was going to happen, then it actually did, and it didn't work out. But I'm with you, Eddie. I don't give any fault to Getzlaf at all. I think the fact that he talked to Murray, the fact that he talked basically to the fans and was open about it was huge. And I hope he does come back, for a couple years and then finish it out if that's what he wants to do. And if he doesn't, if he decides to retire, then that's his right too. So it's just really interesting. A lot of craziness with Deslauriers and Getzlaf, and both of them staying in this 24-hour period, Eddie.
Yeah, it only begs the question: is Deslauriers going to be traded come the off season if his name was already brought up? Something like that. It's just I don't know. It's just weird. And this whole season has been weird. So it just kind of going with the whole theme of this season, how it's been weird, and the trade deadline got weird, and all the deleted tweets. I still don't understand why he deleted the tweet. If he jumped the gun and messed up, why not just go and say it? Just why delete the tweet altogether? It's just gonna go away. You doing that, it's only gonna feel more fuel to the fire. So I don't know. We'll have to just wait and see, I guess. And I don't know. Knowing Murray, nothing's really gonna happen in the offseason either, so we don't have to worry about that. But I guess the big question is if Getzlaf is going to come back. Because if he does, he'll be a Duck. But the question is if he's going to want to come back and play another season.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And, the Ducks did make 2 moves last minute. We waited all morning for this, right? We were sitting there wondering if they were going to hear anything about Getzlaf, or were we going to hear anything about Deslauriers. Of course, the other big names are Rakell and Manson, which we'll get to in a minute here. But, 2 last-minute trades right after the buzzer, kind of getting used to this now. And it was funny because you and I talked on the last show, and I put out an article about Hakanpää, Hutton, and Larson. And we said, hey, watch these guys. These guys might get traded. These are the lesser-known players. And then 2 out of 3 of them got traded. So I was like, so we're going for the small-time stuff here with the defensemen. So Hutton ends up going to Toronto. The Ducks get a 5th-round 2022 pick, and then they sent Hakanpää and a 6th-round 2022 pick to Carolina for Hayden. So I was happy with the Hutton trade. I thought he wasn't working out and doing what we needed. I thought he started out okay, but then kind of tapered off a little bit. Ducks got him on a PTO, not a big deal. So I thought that that was a good trade. With Fleury, I kind of had mixed emotions. I know in our group chat, I was kind of irritated in the beginning, and then started doing some more research and thinking about it. I don't know. I still have mixed feelings. I think the Ducks might come out on this one. Both guys are kind of similar in stature. Hayden is younger, does have more offensive upside, maybe not as strong defensively as Hakanpää. But either way, these trades aren't, going to really do anything to help the team, unfortunately, Eddie. I mean, they're just both kind of, I don't know, just kind of whatever trades, in my opinion. I don't really have, a lot to say about them. I mean, I think they help the Ducks a little bit, but there's not really much more to these.
Yeah, they're not bad trades. They weren't like what the hell are you doing? They're just typical Murray trades. These trades aren't bad. They're not going to significantly help the Ducks get to them to be that better team, or to boost them into a spot next year where they're considered a contender or even a playoff team. But it's just, they're not bad. But these types of trades will be forgotten about within 6 months, and you have to go back and I wonder who they traded him for, and it's just gonna fade into the air. And getting a 5th-round pick is cool, especially that you didn't really give up anything for him. He was just a player tryout and ended up signing him. He helped out when the injuries happened. He was there, but it irritates me that you're in a position to get teams to try to overpay for players and to make a big trade that Ducks really needed. They needed a pick. They needed a roster player, and you don't make those trades happen. You just stick to your minor trades. You spend to the wire talking to Carolina on a Josh Manson trade that was talked about, but nothing happens. I didn't want to see Manson or Rakell. I didn't want to see both of them at the same time gone. I wanted one of them gone, preferably Rakell. I prefer to keep Manson, but we would have got a higher return for Manson. But it's just nothing really happens. The Ducks don't go anywhere. They're still in that same spot, and And then they keep winning games too. They're probably gonna not get that first overall pick that I've been wanting all season. But it's just frustrating. Another year and another position where it's clearly the Ducks are rebuilding, and Murray just couldn't get teams to bite or overpay, or he just didn't want to do it. Or he waited to the last minute and try to make all these trades happen. But it's like, dude, you had a few days. Like, teams started to drop the ball on Saturday and Sunday making trades, and you just kind of wait to the last minute and to make two minor trades that really aren't going to have any significance to the Ducks.
Yeah, we had one question about Fleury from Cody Book on Instagram. He asked, do we think Fleury being stuck behind great D core in Carolina hasn't given him a real shot? I do think that's part of it. Maybe why some people are looking at this trade going, okay, why did we get this guy? He's not as good. But here's the problem. He's going to basically be in the same situation. You have Lindholm, Fowler, Manson, Shattenkirk, and then him. He's not going to be in the top 4 role. So I'm curious to see what will happen. He joined the team. He and Hakanpää, they took private flights. They switched the players up real quick, so he's going to jump in and play with the Ducks here coming up. That they're going to be playing the Sharks, some games against the Kings and whatnot, and to finish out the season here. We only got a couple weeks to go. So, but I'm with you. It's not as significant, and I don't know what kind of look we're going to get at him. I hope he adds to the offense and is able to help out, but it's really, I think the upsetting part, which a lot of people are talking about, is Raquel and Manson. And this is the big thing. You started touching on it. It seemed like Manson and Carolina could have worked that deal out. We asked you guys if you thought letting Raquel go and Manson go for a first, second, or third round pick, what would you guys think? Overwhelmingly, you guys all felt a first round pick, over 80% of you, and only a handful. 16% said a second round pick, and then 1% for third, which we knew that. But most of you wanted a first round pick, and it sounds like Murray's comments on this. He talked about it. He said we were going into another good draft year. To add to the ones that we've had the last few years, he said making deals for draft picks who aren't first rounders doesn't make a lot of sense for us right now. My goal is to get players who have already been drafted and have a little bit of experience already. So it seems like his game plan going into this draft was to get, first round picks or to get top, younger players that are NHL ready. And, obviously we're not there. We're not on the phone. We're not in the emails and the texts and the conversations or whatnot. But he wasn't able to get that for Raquel or Manson. So it almost seems in the Carolina situation that he wasn't able to do it for Manson. So maybe they inquired about Hakanpää because he had played a top 4 role, had filled in with Lindholm, and they put him in there. And then in order for the Ducks to do it, they wanted Hayden. They knew Hayden was going to be on their bottom there, but then the Ducks threw in a draft pick, and it seems like it kind of started out high and it went down, and that was the end result there. But what do you think? A lot of people upset. They think that Raquel and Manson should have got first round picks. It sounds like Murray wasn't getting offered those. We also had another poll question about that, kind of throwing out a whole bunch of stuff to see what people thought. If he overvalued players, is he just tough to deal with? Did nobody give him a first round pick? And then lastly, the expansion draft. And you guys had a little over 40% said you didn't think he got offered a first round pick. Quarter of you thinks that he overvalued players, and then followed by the expansion draft being an issue, and then him being difficult to deal with. So that's where you guys broke the line. I think it was a combination of pretty much all of those, or at least 3 out of 4 of those things in here. But what did you think, Eddie? It sounds like he went in there with this mindset, not so much, hey, I can sell Raquel, Manson, and maybe Getzlaf or some other players. It seems like, okay, he had this mindset, I want first round picks or younger NHL ready players or bust kind of a thing. I don't know. That just kind of seems, by what his quote's saying and then how it played out. Do you think that was kind of his take, or you think something else why these guys didn't get moved, specifically, of course, Raquel and Manson?
I don't know. I think Murray's just trying to smoke and mirrors again. He's trying to just convince everyone that these players were worth that value, and he wasn't gonna buckle and kind of take less than what he wanted. But I think it's just a way for him not to trade these guys, and he can still just save face, and he can just show the owners like, hey, look, I was out there trying to trade him, but teams wouldn't, give me what these players are for. They wanted to underpay me, which is kind of rare at the trade deadline because teams usually overpay. It just seems like typical Murray BS. Why these guys didn't go. Like, you're telling me no teams offered a first-round pick for Manson? I call BS on that. 110% BS on that. Baby Raquel, I can see him not getting a first-round pick with how cold he's been and the streakiness and how his production dipped off. I can see that. I can see him not getting a first-round pick for him. That's understandable, but not for Manson, a player that can easily slot into a top 4 role, that can eat those huge, large minutes. That's going to be that physical player that teams desperately want and need in the playoffs. You can't get one team that's going to make the playoffs to bite and shoot you that first-round pick for him. No, but I call BS on that. I think Murray is just, he didn't want to trade these guys at all, but he didn't want to just go into the trade deadline and say he didn't want to trade them, so he just kind of overvalued them so high that it scared other teams away, and just so he wouldn't trade them, and he just had an excuse why he didn't trade them. So if that makes sense, that just pisses me off. And once again, the Ducks are going to be in the same position going into the offseason. And you know what? Honestly, too, don't be expecting the offseason to come and Murray just going to magically just do a 180 and start making moves that are going to bolster up the Ducks and make them better, because I can't see that happening either. I think we're going to be in the same position come start of the next season too, with Murray and his comments and him the smoke and mirrors and him trying to convince everyone this is a win now team and we have a core that's going to win, and whatever excuse he's going to try to use. I'm so sick and freaking tired of it. It's just getting so frustrating and annoying day in and day out, watching how Murray tries to conduct this team, and it's not good business. You're paid to put product on the ice that's going to attract people, and you're just putting crap on the ice, and you see crap that's going on the ice, and you're not doing anything about it, and it just more just talk and words from Murray than anything, which I absolutely hate.
I think you echo a lot of what people are talking about. I mean, that's a boatload right there. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that felt that he overvalued the players going into this. Like I said, a fourth of you felt that in the poll, and I saw a lot of comments about that. I agree with you. I think the other part of this, not to defend him, but I think the expansion draft did play into this, and that was part of the problem. You saw there were first round picks out there to be had, because there were ones that were done. And we'll talk a little bit about the league and some of those other trades as we wrap up the show and whatnot, and a little bit here too. But they were out there. But part of the problem, this was kind of a unique situation. You had the cap not going up. You have the expansion draft. You have Manson and Raquel. I think people were hesitant. I think they both could have got first-round picks if there wasn't an expansion draft. The issue here is that both these guys can be exposed. So you have to protect them, or you have to figure that out. Like, am I going to give up a first-round pick for a Raquel or a Manson? And then depending on what kind of configuration I'm going into as far as my protection of my players, am I going to be able to protect these guys? I mean, I don't think any team in their right mind would want to give up a first-round pick and then not be able to protect them and then lose them. That's just craziness, right? So, but there are picks out there. There were ones that were thrown out there, especially Detroit with that crazy trade. But there was some stuff to be had out there. The other thing that people don't talk about too is both these guys were injured this season, and how much that weighs into it. I think, like you were talking about Manson, I think probably could have gotten more of a better value just because of being a stay-at-home defenseman, a right-handed shot. He had just another year. There's things that could have maybe been worked out or whatnot. Raquel, I was a little bit more concerned with. You remember he got tangled up with Kyle Clifford and took that nasty fall and hit his head on the ice, and he did not look good. And he was out for those 4 games or so and then came back. That would be a concern for me. If I'm a GM, I see that play. And then, of course, he cooled off. Like you said, he was on fire. He had, those 12 points in 6 games back in March. He was the talk of the town. He was on every trade list. And then now he's not scoring points. Then you see that happen. And then on top of that, you have to worry about the expansion draft. So I think that's why a lot of people were hesitant with Raquel. I think part of it was the overvaluation, like you said, Eddie. Then I think it was that type of injury and then the expansion draft. I think it was just a recipe for disaster in terms of Raquel. Manson, it sounded like he could have had something worked out with Carolina, and it didn't. He ended up going with a little bit more of a minor trade. That one was a little bit more frustrating for me because it adds to this whole thing with the expansion draft coming up. And we'll do a show as it gets closer. But if you look at the situation now, the Ducks brought in Hayden, right? So now, I mean, who are you going to protect in the expansion draft in terms of defense? Hayden is one that you have to protect, if you want to, but he's one that's either protect or expose. I mean, what are you going to do here? And then you got Shattenkirk, Manson, Lindholm, and Fowler now. So you got 5 guys. Max, you can protect 4. So now you got to try and figure that out. What are you going to do? If Manson would have gotten traded and they got Hayden, you could have protected Hayden and then exposed Larson. So I don't know what the Ducks are going to do. They're going to have to try and figure that out. I think they're not going to, shy away from protecting 4. I don't see them exposing Shattenkirk and Hayden. I think that they would want to, keep both those guys or flop one of them. I don't know. It's a bad situation, I think, to be in coming up. Trying to figure out, hey, what are you going to do? Because if you don't protect Fleury right now that you picked up, now you gave away Hakanpää and a pick, and then he's gone. I don't know. Seattle might not want him. I mean, they might not. They might not go for him. I don't know. They may not want Shattenkirk. I mean, he hasn't played as well either. So that's my issue too, Eddie. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think some people are trying to oversimplify this. They're just like, well, he should have just traded this guy for that guy. Okay, in a normal draft, I agree. But it's just a weird time with the lockdowns and COVID, the cap issue, this expansion thing, Raquel Manson being injured. I mean, to me, there's just a lot of factors to go into it. I'm not making excuses. I don't like it. I think he could have moved Manson, and it ultimately didn't work out. But they're going to have to figure out some stuff with the expansion draft too, Eddie. So now we're kind of in a bind here, what we're going to do with the defense.
Yeah, it's gonna be at least something that will be fun and interesting in the offseason with this expansion draft. I can't see them exposing Fleury and just losing him for not getting anything in return, especially giving up Yanni and that pick. I just can't see that happening. And Fleury's kind of a defender where you don't know his ceiling. He was stuck behind a lot of defensemen in Carolina. So we don't really know what we have in him and what his ceiling and potential is, as well as Seattle doesn't know. And to take a chance on a young defenseman like that, it would be dumb for them not to do it. So I think he stays in Anaheim. They don't expose him. Shattenkirk, on the other hand, I can see him getting exposed, and I can see Seattle not taking him. He hasn't played too well to his contract this season. It just seems like it's too much money for them to want to take on and just kind of a like a project to see if he'll regain some steam over there in Seattle with the new team. I think it's a risk that they're not willing to take, especially with this flat cap that's going to be happening too. It's not going to go up; it's going to stay the same. But it's just too much to risk. But I definitely don't see Fleury getting exposed. And if he does and gets picked up, then that's even more fuel and hate that Murray's going to get, and excuses he's going to come up with why he did what he did.
Yeah, part of it, I just kind of thought about it now. Maybe, like you said, he protects Fleury, and then he exposes Shattenkirk with that cap. Like you said, he's 32, so he's older. Maybe he's just going to be like, okay, if you guys want to take him, then that creates more room for him in the off season, like you were talking about. Of course, like we said, Getzlaf will be off the books, but then are they going to bring him back? There's other younger players they got to consider. The Perry's thing is going to go from $6 to $2 million against the cap. So the Ducks are going to get some cap back, but then they've got to go sign other players as well. So maybe Murray looks at it as, okay, he's not going to let Fowler, Lindholm, or Manson go for nothing. I don't think, unless that's another option. What if he, be kind of crazy, but what if he protects Shattenkirk and Fleury, Eddie, and then exposes Manson? I mean, it's kind of crazy. I'm just trying to maybe think a little bit out of the box, but is that something you think he would do?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I'd probably be rioting outside of Anaheim at that point. It just would crack me and break me. Like, absolutely no point to do that at all. That'd be the dumbest thing he could have done. Like, just pretty much expose. Oh man, I don't even want to be thinking about that. And you know what? The fan base too, Mike. I don't know how much more they can handle because they're already at that breaking point. they're ready to storm Honda Center. I think it's beyond pitchforks now. Like they're just on that edge and they're heated too. All the comments, it just they're getting frustrated and tired of what's going on. And I don't blame them. I don't blame anyone at all. It's extremely frustrating. But I would say that's not going to happen. Got to be the dumbest decision ever made. But who knows it, Murray? So it's just one of those things where you just don't know.
And you talk about comments and the fans getting upset, which they've been. I mean, they've been all out this week, and rightfully so. With what's going on. But another comment that came out from another GM that sparked all kinds of anger was on Elliot Freeman's podcast, the 31 Thoughts. He talked about another GM who was talking about Murray and the Ducks, and they were saying that it was basically, don't ask, but if you're going to ask, the price is going to be so high that you're not going to want to make a trade anyways. I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but that's kind of the lines of what the quote is. So it makes you think again, and that's one GM. I mean, I don't know what the other 29 or so said, in these discussions, but you have that one. I don't know, maybe that team wasn't in a position to give anything to the Ducks, but if Murray's being that stubborn, he's coming up there saying, I want A, and I'm only going for A, I'm not going to go for B. I mean, you're not leaving a lot of wiggle room to work with. And I don't know if that's what happened, but that one quote there kind of leads to that. And people are, really upset when that quote came out. And it goes back to I didn't get offered first round picks. Okay, maybe you weren't offered first round picks, but if you set the ceiling so high and didn't give other GMs an alternative, then, I mean, would you have gotten those picks anyways? I mean, I don't know. We'll never know, of course. Like I said, we're not there. We're just talking about this now from these quotes that we're hearing and whatnot. But I mean, that just didn't really help that situation right there, Eddie. People were upset about that. If he did indeed set the ceiling so high and not want to try to come down from it.
I think that's what he did. I think he did that so he won't lose these players that he really didn't want to trade, but he felt obligated and kind of borderline forced to try to make something happen so he can just kind of prove that he's trying to do something that's going to better the team. But I really think he didn't want to make these big trades. He doesn't like making big trades like that. He doesn't like making big splashes or changing the dynamic like that. So I think he just set the prices so high it would not budge, and he wanted more than what they're worth. And I'm not saying Raquel and Manson are worth crap, because they're not. They're great quality players. I think they would thrive in a different environment. It's probably not easy playing in Anaheim right now, and I don't know what's going on with management and coaching staff, but obviously there's something going on that maybe that no one knows about. I think a change in scenery would show both these players blossom until their potential, or what the players that we all know they're capable of doing. But I just don't think Murray wanted to make that big trade, and he wanted to revert back to his comfort zone and just go back to these little minor trades that he's so used to doing all those times. He even waited to the last minute to pull off these trades, which is another a thing that's been happening in the last few trade deadlines. Is we don't hear zip from the Ducks, and then once the trade deadline is officially over, all these trades are pouring in, and then boom, here comes the Ducks making back-to-back trades getting announced. So it's just kind of typical Murray, and it's unfortunate the Ducks did not get any better. So the only thing we can bank on now is if Fleury can get that room to fly, and we can see his ceiling and see what he could bring to the table. We have a few more games to kind of see the sample size and what he can bring to the table and how much better he can make the Ducks if he can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got like a couple weeks to go. We'll see how he's going to do. We had another question too from Larry Gabeau. He asked about re-signing Volkov too. That's another one to watch in these next couple weeks. He had those couple goals in this game against the Sharks, and we'll talk about more of those in the next show. But that's another player to keep your eye on. I like Volkov. I think the Ducks should bring him back. He's going towards the net, which is what you and I talked about. This team has been lacking as players that stand in front of the goalie and get in there and screen and cause some chaos and whatnot. He's starting to do that. He's starting to get into some of those open areas in the slot and score. So I'm really interesting. I know some of you are out there saying, I'm not going to watch the rest of the season. I get it, but I want to see Drysdale playing in these games. Supposedly Zegras is supposed to come back up. He was killing it with the goals just the other night. Or almost every night, basically. The goals have been scoring so many points, it's been ridiculous. So you got those things to look forward to, and then, like you said, check out Fleury and Volkov coming up. So I hope they do re-sign him. See how it goes from there. I think the big surprise, and this was, we had this question from Tony M. Freed on Instagram, is like, who would I have traded? The surprise for the Ducks, Raquel Manson, yes, there's a lot of talk about them. They didn't move one or other. I thought maybe one of those guys would have gone, but the one you and I talked about that we didn't see was Heinen. He did not get moved at all. That was the one that probably shocked me the most. I thought for sure he'd been scratched a lot. Obviously, he came back in these last couple games with more injuries to the players and stuff. Obviously, Vancouver, with all that stuff going on, I'm sure teams are kind of wanting to stay away with most of the players being sick, obviously, trying to let that's a whole nother mess that the league's trying to deal with. So anything with him and that team pretty much went away. So I don't know if there weren't any other teams that were looking into him, or maybe Murray's changed his mind. Now he wants to give him more time. But anything else surprise you? I know Heinen kind of surprised you too, Eddie, because you wrote about it in the other game recap. You thought he would be gone. I thought he'd be gone. He's still here. What's your thoughts on him, or any other surprises as it pertains to the Ducks?
That was the biggest surprise right there, is Heinen not being traded. I for sure thought he would not be a Duck come trade deadline. I've said that numerous times. So that was a really huge surprise that he didn't get traded. So if you're not going to trade him, then try to figure out where you can utilize him and where you can add him and how he's going to help the Ducks be better, because it just made no sense that you're not really using him. You're scratching him numerous times, but you don't trade him. You're just holding on to him. So I don't know what's going on with that. It's like one of the biggest surprises. I was wondering too if Miller, I know he hasn't been playing too well, but if he got calls for teams wanting a veteran backup or even a third goalie going into the playoffs that can play in, I guess, those like that playoff stage and kind of play big games like that. And also the way Carrick has been playing. Carrick dropping the gloves here. He's getting consistent on the score sheet, even though that's not his game for the Ducks, and that's not his game moving forward. It's just that's the kind of player that you want as your 13th, maybe 14th forward. Or if a series gets a little chippy, you want someone in there to create the energy, to start throwing your hands around, throwing your body around, crashing that front of the net, making hell in front of the goalie. That's another player. Obviously, the Ducks weren't going to really get anything significant for him. This would be a future considerations kind of thing, or a 7th round draft pick, but or swap an AHL player for him. But I think I was surprised that or at least if teams didn't call on him. But I wouldn't want him to see him gone either. He's been playing good. He's been that energy the Ducks have right now. And he's a great leadership role for the San Diego Gulls too. He's their captain, so I'm glad he stood. But like I said, the biggest surprise was Heinen, him not going.
Yeah, I was surprised. I'm with you. Carrick's been playing pretty well for the Ducks. Stolarz has been playing pretty well. Didn't really hear anything about Miller, so I don't know if they called on him. But it looks like he's due to retire at the end of the season. So it looks like Stolarz might be our number 2 guy. I mean, he had that record-breaking save. Shutout the other night. So I mean, he's been playing very, very well for the Ducks. So that's the other couple players that I'm going to want to watch. As the end of the season, try to give some positives. I know that they're going to be playing the Sharks and the Kings. They should be able to win some of these games. You might not want them to win these games because you got the draft coming up and whatnot. But we'll now kind of focus on just the other trades in general. Not really go over all of them. There wasn't a whole lot. Like we talked about, the trade deadline was a dud line, right? There wasn't as many moves. I love Thomas sent me that and I started cracking up. But it kind of started. This trade deadline was very weird. It was like spread out a lot. There was stuff trickling in over the weekend, and then Monday we didn't do a live show, which I'm glad you and I didn't, because we wasted a lot of time last year, I think, trying to get that stuff done. And here we thought it wasn't going to be as crazy, and it wasn't. But these trades were interesting. I mean, there was a couple 3-way trades that were kind of crazy and confusing. I mean, I'm not going to explain all of them here, but you had Columbus with the David Savard trade, and then you had St. Louis, or excuse me, Tampa Bay and Detroit all being involved in that one. And, you had to do that. And then you also had it where you had San Jose and Toronto involved. These like three-way trades, it was just very interesting because they involved first-round picks, they involved UFAs, but then you had to have another team come in and kind of be a broker to do that. And then like those, players were having their salary cap split up amongst other teams, and then teams were getting picks. It was kind of crazy because to me, I almost thought like this was something that the Ducks would have to try to do, maybe to try to get a first round pick, is try a three-way trade, which I can't remember Murray doing one. Maybe he has, but I thought those two trades were interesting, the three-way ones where you had the middleman in there, Detroit getting a pick in the first one and San Jose in the other one. What did you think about those two trades, Eddie? They were pretty crazy. I had to like read through them a couple times to understand what actually happened.
Yeah, it was nuts. It's just those kind of trades. There's a lot of moving parts, and I can see why a lot of those trades were made, but like not on deadline day. It was just I can't even think about the logistics of those trades, but I guess it worked out for all the teams involved. Columbus got rid of a couple players. They got some assets back. Hopefully, that's going to boost them up. They've been fun to watch at times. This season, reality finally came, and I guess that adrenaline of them being a playoff contending team kind of wore off, and reality set, so they had to say goodbye to their captain too, which I know probably hurt a lot of Columbus fans seeing him go, but that was just I don't know, just the way everything worked out. Like you said, Mike, I had to sit there and like, wait, what happened? And who got what? And wait, did they traded this? But the whole salary thing, especially Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is just crunched already as it is, so it was just kind of weird seeing all that. And like I said before too, it's been a weird year, so why not make kind of weird kind of trades? And with the flat cap, I could see this happening a lot more next season as well, not just this season.
Yeah, you're right. It is something that could maybe happen again next season. It took me a minute to try to figure these things out. But, Columbus, like you said, they ended up trading Savard and retaining salary. They ended up getting some high picks, from Tampa Bay. Detroit ends up getting a pick as well. And Tampa Bay gets some players in it. I mean, just things, work out for everybody in there. And then, of course, San Jose, I don't know if the Ducks would ever done something like that because they're in the division. Also, they see them a lot. They may see them a lot next year, too. Like you said, who knows how the scheduling is going to be with those two. What did you think, too? San Jose ended up trading Dubnyk to your other team, Colorado. What did you think about that trade? Because to me, Dubnyk hasn't played as well as of late. Did you like that trade? Johansson seems to be kind of maybe picking up a little bit better in net. How do you think that's going to affect your number 2 Colorado, who obviously is going to be a strong contender in the playoffs?
It's freaking weird. That's a Wild goalie. It's a Minnesota Wild goalie. Now he's rocking Avalanche colors. That was kind of, and they're my second favorite team, and I still felt kind of like, ugh, like what the heck are you doing? That was just kind of weird to me. But you know what? Dubnyk has proved himself. He's overcame adversity, getting waived, getting traded. I think it was like 3 or 4 different teams that he just was bouncing back from. He finally found a home in Minnesota and kind of reached that elite level status that he got. Obviously, his play dipped in, but I think he still has some elite games in him. And it takes the pressure off of Grubauer now. So Grubauer doesn't have to perform like lights out every night. He can have those off games and not be afraid to do that. Or if something happens where for some reason the Avalanche get all their injuries during the playoffs, this year's different. They had a lot of their injuries at the beginning of the season, but it came down to the last few years that they had their third string goalies that were just minor league goalies, if that, had to fill in roles and try to win them games, and it's just hard to do that. You can't expect your goalies, third or fourth string goalies, to come up there and be stellar superstars. With Dubnyk, it gives them that extra depth and that insurance too. You're going to get some kind of goaltending and decent goaltending, if not those elite level games that he still has left in him. You'll get him to perform at those levels when he's needed. It's not going to be every night. He's not going to regain form and steal the number 1 spot from Grubauer, but he could still give you that cushion and that comfortableness you need going into the playoffs to make them even that more dangerous of a team.
Yeah, and your team is going to be one to watch for sure. I mean, having him added in there, you got added depth now, like you talked about. You know, he's got that experience, even though he has struggled. But your team is going to, you know, them and Vegas, I'm taking, are going to fight it out for the West Division, and you know, be strong contenders. My other team, the one that a lot of people don't like, Pittsburgh, they ended up getting Jeff Carter, who I can't stand because he's a king, right? Just like you talk about Dubnyk being a wild player, right? I don't like Carter. I haven't. So he ends up going over there. You know, probably Pittsburgh, like we said, talked about Getzlaf. That didn't work out. Obviously, Jeff Carter's salary a lot less, easier to work with there. So Pittsburgh, I'm going to, of course, follow them in the playoffs as I do the last couple of years, unfortunately, because the Ducks are out. But I'm like, I kind of don't want Pittsburgh to win because I don't want Carter to get another cup. So now I have mixed feelings about the Penguins. I'm not 100% happy. I might have to go with you and root for Colorado or Vegas and stick with those two teams. But yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh was talking to the Ducks, so they talked to them about Deslauriers and Getzlaf. We know that much. They ended up getting Carter in that deal there. So any other trades that really stuck out to you that you wanted to talk about? I know we have Mantha we can get to at the end. That was the last big one. But besides that one, any others that you wanted to cover, Eddie, or anything about the trade deadline? Like I said, it seemed like it was a UFA type trade deadline because people were afraid of the expansion draft. Seemed to be a big thing. But any other observations or trades you want to discuss?
Yeah, well, you know what? This was the first time in 3 or 4 years since I actually been covering the deadline where I didn't have an alcoholic drink at 6 a.m. in my hand. So that was kind of a weird surprise. Usually I'm toasted by like 2 o'clock, barely finishing up the articles and then sending them in. But this year, I'm not drinking still, so I guess that factors in it. But it was kind of weird. Some other ones to note were the Rangers traded Brandon Lemieux to LA for a 4th-round pick. Do we really care? No, but it's LA, so we want to keep tabs on who they're getting. Also, former Duck Brandon Montour got traded to Florida from Buffalo, so he has a chance to get out of that whatever's going on in Buffalo over there. We talked about Taylor Hall. We talked about Taylor Hall, correct? Yeah.
I don't know if we did, but
I
don't think we did. I think we did before the show.
Okay, yeah, we forgot about Taylor Hall, but yeah, well, he's going to Boston, and you know what? He had a no movement clause, and there was other teams that probably could have overpaid, and he could have got a 1st-round pick, but his heart was set on going to Boston. He even stated that he wouldn't mind signing a few-year extension in Boston, so best of luck to him. I hope he starts tearing it up in Boston. I picked him up in fantasy, so that's kind of important to me, getting paid for one of my fantasy teams I'm on. Another former Duck player that got traded to was Kyle Palmieri. Got traded from the Devils along with Travis Zajac to the New York Islanders. They traded for them for a 2001 1st-round pick, a 2022 4th-round pick, AJ Greer, Mason Jobst. So he's gone over there. Another former Duck that got traded was Eric Gabranson. Of course, he goes to Nashville from Ottawa, so that's kind of bad to see. But I wished all of them all the best of luck, too.
Yeah, the one thing that I think, and it's going to get more of you listening upset, is Buffalo. This team struggling all kinds, just throughout the whole season, right? Their crazy losing streak. The Ducks are battling it out with them for a higher draft pick, sadly, this season, but that's what we're looking at. But they made moves. They unloaded some people and did some things. They ended up, getting a 3rd and 5th round pick from Montreal. They get a 3rd from Florida, and then they also get a 2nd from Boston. So they ended up getting all these picks. And I know Murray was big on this whole 1st-round pick, but I mean, look at what they did there. They made these trades and they loaded up in the draft coming up here. They didn't get a 1st round, but I mean, they got a 2nd and a couple 3rd rounds. I mean, that's not bad. They're trying to get themselves in that position. They're definitely going to have a high pick. I mean, they're really loaded up for this draft. So they did some things where the Ducks didn't. It's kind of frustrating. I do think that this draft, though, it's going to be a weird draft, and we'll save the big discussion on that and everything else in the summertime when all this stuff comes up. But it's going to be hard to evaluate players too. Thomas and I were talking about this as far as the Ducks getting a high pick. We want that, but part of the problem is these minor league teams either haven't played seasons or had shortened seasons too. So I think it's going to be a wild draft trying to determine the value of players because you haven't been able to see them as much. Obviously, with different issues going to different countries and things like that. So that's something else to factor into it. But even with that, the Ducks still could have gotten some picks. Not lower ones, maybe some higher ones. I mean, you just never know. You might get a second, third round pick that would be fantastic. But maybe that weighed in on Murray's decision. Maybe that's why he only wanted first round picks, knowing that the scouting reports are going to be kind of limited. But again, overall he didn't improve the team. And then Monday, the trade deadline was pretty boring. And then at the end, you get that Mantha trade, just like, what the heck was this? I mean, they get a couple players, a first and a second round pick for Mantha. I'm like, are you effing kidding me right now? Like, so when I saw that and then, and I know it's not quite the same situation. He's got a lower contract and whatnot. A guy that can be in Washington for a while. They'd obviously protect him and whatnot. But you saw that deal, and I'm like, why can't we have Yzerman as a GM? I mean, holy cow, man. I mean, he did a huge deal. I mean, Washington's another one that's trying to make a move and make a push, and I mean they went for it. What did you think of that trade? You think Washington overpaid a little bit, or what's your take on that? Because it just was crazy. At the end, again, you had like the Ducks, a couple trades come in, a couple of these other minor things. I thought the day was over. Then this thing comes in at the end, and I was just like, WTF, dude. This was just crazy. I mean, granted, obviously Mantha's not a UFA, right, and all that stuff, but still, he freaking Yzerman got that for him. I mean, what did you think, Eddie?
That's a hell of a return. That's a huge haul. I'm glad this trade happened because it gave people something to talk about. It was just like that big blockbuster trade everyone likes to hear about. But when I saw the return, I had to double check and like, wait, is Dylan Larkin involved? Was that the player? They messed up the name, but I think it's a little bit of an extremely overpayment for him. But I don't know. Stevie Y is making some good moves. He's becoming not just a really great former player, but a hell of a GM. Him and Sakic too. Sakic he fleeces teams. Look at the Matt Duchene situation he got. That was a 3-way trade. He fleeced the team, but this was just like wow. Like that first round, a second round, and then you have Verana where he can play. I think he can play the top 6 role, if not a top line role, especially in Detroit. He can probably be that guy to eat up all those minutes and really show production on the score sheet. Panic is probably one of those players is kind of hit or miss. His cap is a little high for the player he is, but still, getting all that for Mantha, it's insane. I don't know what happened. I don't know what information they had on the Washington GM over there. If they had some pictures of him, he didn't want publicly posted. But holy hell, that was a steal. That was a huge return for him. It was just. Wow, that's just crazy.
Yeah, that trade was like an anomaly. Like we said, it seemed like it was the UFA show for the trade deadline. Like we said, GMs were more apprehensive about getting a guy that they weren't sure that they were going to protect. So they were willing to throw some picks or players, at UFAs in this thing. But this one, wow, it's just crazy, or like we said, the other ones that they had those crazy 3-way trades that they had to work out. So it's frustrating. Not a lot happened at the trade deadline, as we talked about. We didn't expect the Ducks to do a lot, but they did have an opportunity. They ended up not doing anything really to improve the team or speed up the rebuild. So the other problem is now trying to value Manson and Raquel in the summertime. I don't know how it's going to look because, one thing that would have been in Murray's advantage is if a team knew that they could protect him and they were a team running for the cup, you could have had that player this time to try to make that run, and then you would have had them next season as well, regardless if you would have extended them or not, if you knew you could protect them. So some things to consider in there, but the rest of the season's pretty much done for the Ducks. We all know that. I know some of you tuned out and said bye-bye. But like I said, Eddie and I are going to go to some of the games.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. I'm looking forward to that extremely. That's going to be awesome. You know what, too, Mike? And a lot of people are pissed off about this. There's a lot of restrictions when you go to the games. I'm actually happy about the restrictions because I'm not able to drink until maybe May 8th. 7th or 8th was I'm going to have my first alcoholic beverage of 2021 because I'll hit my weight goal of 185 prior to that. But I'm going to hit, have my first drink. So it's like, I didn't want to be at the game and have that fear of missing out. It's like, I want to be at the game with the beer, but now it's like, I can't drink anyway. So it's like, okay, cool. Well, in my mind, it's like, well, you can't drink anyways. You can't go buy a beer because they're not selling any. So I don't know. I like that rule for my selfish benefit. I know you and the 99% of the fan base isn't going to like that rule.
Oh yeah, that part I'm not happy. I don't know how. I don't know. I may get a drink or two somewhere else beforehand. I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure that out.
Well, you definitely have to meet up beforehand. And I'll be your driver since I'm not drinking. But I appreciate you inviting me to a couple of games, though. Thank you, Mike, for that. I'm looking forward to watching the games and also looking forward to hanging out in your company again because it's been over a year since I've seen you, and that's kind of way too long.
I agree 100%, man. It's been weird. It's going to be good to get back together and hang out for sure. And then obviously we'll have another podcast. I don't know if we'll do one before the end of the season or around there, but we'll get another one. We'll talk about that. Just a couple of little things real quick before I wrap this up. I know in the last podcast, for some reason, it got cut off at the end. We had our giveaway. If you didn't get it, I re-uploaded it. I don't know if it fixed it on all the platforms, but the third word was together. So if you didn't get it from the last one, so once you have the 3 words for the phrase, just email it to us at info@DucksNPucks.com. I'll kind of extend it a little bit, obviously, because I know some people had messaged me. We just kind of had a mishap there. So just look for that. And then we still have our sponsors too, as well. We have Manscaped. Check it out. You get the discount with DucksNPucks as the code for that. So, just make sure to look for also Bucked Up and get that one as well as DucksNPucks 93 for that one. So, we'll post other things about that and mention the little giveaways. We'll be doing some other stuff as well. So just keep your eye out for that. I have something for the Patreon people too that I'll announce it to them separately, but we're going to be doing a giveaway for them. So if you want to jump on that, patreon.com/DucksNPucks as well. And I know it's disappointing, but hang in there. We'll ride out the last season, and let's go Ducks.